This video is an introduction to factoring. I'll talk about what factoring is and how it's helpful. Let's get started. Before we can talk about factoring, there are two ideas you have to be familiar with, and that is, what is a factor? Okay, when we say, this is a factor of that, what does that really mean? Well, let's talk about the number 12, for example. Okay, 12 is 1 times 12. That means that 1 is a factor of 12, and so is 12, because 1 times something equals 12, and also 12 times something equals 12. Okay, that might be not very interesting, but 2 times 6 is 12, and so both 2 and 6 are factors of 12 because those numbers times something else is equal to 12. Okay, and also 3 times 4 is also 12, so 3 and 4 are also factors of 12. So basically, the process of factoring has to do with finding two things that multiply together to be your original thing. Okay. Now, why is that useful? Well, it's useful because we will get to problems where we have something like x squared plus 3x plus 2 equals 0, and we're trying to solve this equation. Okay, and the tools we used with only x, where we would isolate the variable, get the x by itself, and then solve, those tools kind of fall apart because I have two x's that are not like terms, right? I have two x's that are not like terms, and so I can't really just solve for get x by itself as easily. Okay, and if I'm guessing and checking, I might be here for quite a while to figure out what it's equal to. Okay, so we will learn much later on after factoring. Okay, we're using a tool right now that's helpful to us later. Okay, let me just tell you right now that this can be factored into x plus 2 and x plus 1 equals 0. Okay, and we'll talk later on about the process of going from this step to this step. Okay, but that process is called factoring. Okay, and I'll show you in a second that there are many different tools we have to complete that process of factoring. Okay, but why it's useful? Okay, what this does for us is we're able to use something called the zero product property. Okay, the zero product property. And that means that if this is 0, it doesn't matter what this is, because anything times 0 equals 0. Okay? And similarly, if this is 0, it doesn't matter what that is, because anything times 0 is equal to 0. Okay? So really, I make this rather complicated question into two very easy questions to solve. Okay, we're breaking down a complex problem into some very small, easy, manageable problems, okay, which I can then solve and find that -2 and -1 are the two x values that would make this top green equation true. Okay, but the process of going from this form to this form, this is called factoring. We will talk a lot more about this later on. Okay, but I want to show you that we have about 7 different tools that we can use to do that process of factoring. Okay, and so keeping them all organized will be an important piece for us a little bit later on. Okay, there is the idea of factoring out some common factor, something that's the same in every single term. Okay, we'll talk about if we have two terms, then we might try looking to see if there's a pattern like a difference of squares. Okay, or the sum or difference of cubes. Okay, if there are 3 terms, then we'll look to see, the first leading coefficient, if it's 1 or not. There really are, the way I see it, two different ways, different two processes or tools we have for factoring it in that form, or if it meets this perfect square format, then we can use that tool. Okay, we can also use the quadratic formula as an option, but typically that's not seen of as factoring. Okay, or if there's 4 terms, we can consider using what's called factor by grouping. Okay, now we will explore each of these in separate videos, over the next several lessons. Okay, my point to you right now is that there are several tools we have to complete this process of factoring. Okay, but ultimately it does break down a very complex problem into much more manageable pieces. All right, this was an introduction to factoring. Thank you so much for watching.